So we explain the concept of AI. I said AI. We explain the concept of the fetch API, and also we touched on a couple things regarding APIs, what APIs were, and how to go about using them. We talked about API keys and base URLs. So today we'll be moving on to explaining what the code is like. So explaining the weather app that I kind of like just built to be exploring how to use this. Sorry guys, give me a sec, please. I quickly have to change my location. It's going to take like 2 3 minutes. Sorry. You guys, please give me a second. Please, I'll give you just a tiny second like this. I don't have to change the application. Yeah, so sorry guys, just had to have a little shift. So good morning once again. So yesterday we touched up on the concept of API and also what APIs are generally and how to use fetch to get responses from certain APIs and also to do certain things. So we touched on how we can fetch APIs, right? Whereby when we fetch the API, it returns a promise to us. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Cool. So the whenever we fetch, it returns a promise to us, right? So that promise is not something that we can use in our browser. So we have to use this dot thing, method to change the response that we're getting into a JSON file, right? And after that, we are going to use this last dot then to actually get our data from wherever and from whatever this JSON file gives us, right? So, and I gave a little quiz yesterday where you used the fetch API to actually get your own data. So that's essentially how you would do it. Now, so one thing that was not mentioned or probably was mentioned yesterday is, I say anytime you need to use a certain data, right, from an API or you're making a certain evaluation with JavaScript and you want to use that data, you have to use this return statement to get whatever value that evaluation is returning. So let's say you have a function that adds two arguments together, you have to return the result for you to be able to use it in your app. I don't know, my system is blocked. Sorry guys, give me a sec. I don't know why that my system was on charge. Sorry. So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Is it file? Is the background noise not bad? So I was mentioning that if we wanted to let's say we want to yes. So yeah, I was mentioning that for us to be able to like get a response and use it in our app, you have to use the return statement to return the results. Let's say we have a function. Yeah? Let's say you have a function. Let's say add. So let's say we have a function like this that adds A and B. For us to be able to use A and B like this, we have to return the statements, right? We have to return the statements for us to be able to use it. So we won't console.log this to use the value because it won't be accessible in other places in our app, and we don't want that. So anytime we have to return the resources, we have to return whatever value we are getting from the function. So that's that about the what's it called? The return statement actually. So we'll be moving on to further explaining the code that we have. So that is this display data function that we have here. You can see from the code that was written, we have this fetch API that gets the API. And I think you all understand why this is written this way, right? You have the base APIs, right? Yeah, I can hear you.
I sent a message to you. Take the chat.
Sorry, what?
I said I sent a message to you. Can you check the chat?
Okay. Give me a minute. I just want to check. Michael, I can't see your message. I don't know. I've not seen your message.
Okay, so I'm not on WhatsApp or on the Zoom call here.
Oh, okay. Please just give me like 2 minutes, please. 2 minutes. I beg of you. 2 minutes.
Yeah, all right. No problem.
Sorry, is this better, guys? Please? Hello, guys. Is it better?
Yes, but there's music at the background.
Okay, okay. Hello. Let me test. See. So how is this? Sorry, is this fine?
Were you saying something before?
I wanted to say like if this was fine.
Wow, it's very, very low. I can't even hear what you're saying, but I know you're talking.
Okay, how's this?
Which is better now.
Let me see if I can increase it. Like, is this fine with everyone, or do I need to like increase it before I start sharing my screen? Because I won't be able to like change my settings. Then
I'm sure what you respond now. Is it fine with you? Or
I guess it is. Hopefully everything is good now. I reduced my background. This is very nice. Okay. Thank you all for waiting. I'm really sorry. Being a messy mom. I guess it is what it is. So moving on to let me just start and recap what the class is. Hopefully, Michael is still recording. So, and if he's not, probably I should do that. Michael, are you still recording? Okay, still on. So, yesterday we spoke about APIs. We talked about APIs, what APIs were, and how to use them in our applications. So, how to make use of the fetch API to get responses from a certain API, right? So, and we mentioned the fact that API is generally a URL, right, that we can use to access certain data, and we can use it to store certain data. We can set a data, we can update the data, we can do the data. We explain the different kind of response methods that we have, the request methods rather, not response methods. So that we have the what's it called? The push. I said push. The post, the get, the patch, the important ones, because we have more than that. So the important ones are the patch, which is for updating parts of your data, right? You have the put. Put is for replacing the whole data with something else, right? You have the post, which is for like setting a new data, and you have the get, which is for like getting the data from a certain server, right? So those are the like, and the delete, which is for deleting a certain data off of a server. So those are the major ones that we really work with as front-end engineers, right? So we mentioned how to use the fetch API and how it works. So we mentioned that the fetch API we use to fetch, right? Then you have you input your URL, and it can take more than one argument, right? If you write the fetch URL this way, I put this in the brackets. You see when I highlight it, right, it has like these two arguments that I can take in. The first one would be the endpoint, and what an endpoint is just the URL for your server. That's basically what an endpoint is. Because you can be in the production environment and you get them mentioning, oh, this certain endpoint for this certain thing. So an endpoint is just like a URL for a specific server operation. So let's say you have a certain place where you store user data, right? So, and there's a certain place where you store the name in particular. So a name endpoint would be where where you're storing the username itself, while the data endpoint would be where you're storing the whole of the user's data that you get. So that's basically what endpoints are. Endpoints are just essentially points where you store certain things in a URL, in an API. So this fetch, it takes into view two arguments, but most of the time you normally pass in one. So the first argument will be the URL that you want to get your data from. So like this example that we have here, you can see that this fetch you have this HTTP whatever slash users, right? This is where we want to get our data from, right? So that's the API that you're going to put. So it doesn't have to be that you want to get the data from an API only. You might want to post something to an API, right? Or you might want to patch something. You might want to delete a particular user. You might want to like replace the user's information with something else. So the URL that you put here is what is going to be targeting whenever you want to perform all of those methods. So I mentioned yesterday that by default, what this fetch method, what it defaults to is the get operation, right? So whenever I put in a URL without actually adding the kind of method that you want to use, what this does is it will get it will get the information from this endpoint. So the fetch by default, what the action that it performs is a get action, which is a get request. So it will get information from this particular endpoint, right? So let's now say for let's just say for simplicity now, we are getting a data from this endpoint. The way JavaScript will fetch it, the way the fetch API would fetch it, it is going to return the response in a way that we won't be able to read in our JavaScript file. So that's when I mentioned what this dot then is, right? So the dot then essentially is for you to be able to, it's called is for you to be able to resolve promises. Because what the fetch API would return you is a promise, right? A promise that is going to be that you need to analyze. So we mentioned on promises yesterday that we can have promises in three states. And what are promises? Promises are those placeholders. I mentioned it yesterday. So promises essentially are placeholders for your data. So let's say you want to get a particular data from somewhere, it would return a promise, right? A promise is not the data itself, but a placeholder for that data. It's something that represents that data and lets you know that okay, there's a particular data at this point, so we are trying to get it. So there are three states to what a promise is. You can have a promise when it is pending. That is when you are trying to resolve the promise that you're getting. That means the data that you're getting. You can have it in a failed state. So the failed state is when you're trying to get a promise, but it is not responding. That means like the API is not working, or you are calling it wrongly, or you are calling it you have a bad request, or the server has internal errors, right? So and the last one is the fulfilled state. The fulfilled state is essentially when the API has returned a response to you, a promise to you. So the promise you definitely like, okay, now we have the promise. Then you cannot perform actions on the promise. So how do you get when you get that promise? Yes, you want to do this dot then thing. This dot then is called I don't remember the time that it's used for it anymore. I don't remember. But it's actually a chaining method that you can use to resolve the promise, right? So what this will do is it will take in an argument. What the argument is, argument. So the argument essentially is whatever response that we'll be getting from this API. So that's how you have this here. Because we are chaining it to it directly, we don't have to like state what the argument is. That's why we can just definitely state it here. Because what a chain means is whenever you do something like this place now, if you want to get this key property from this API, right? You do API.key. We are chaining the key property to what API is. So we'll be able to get what key is from API. The same thing applies to this, right? So you have a promise that is going to be returned from this fetch statement. So we are chaining the dot then to it. So we'll be able to collect the response. So I mentioned yesterday that this does not have to be anything, our argument or parameter. We can name it anything that we want. If I want, I can name this A or B or C. I can name it anything. So at the first instance, right, when you have this fetch API that you are calling a particular API, the first dot then that you normally do is for you to JSONify your your response. What does JSONify means? It's apparently just changing the response that you have from a promise to a JSON file. And why do you want to do this? It's because JSON is one of the only ways where JavaScript can read whatever data is coming from that particular API. You cannot read a promise. JavaScript cannot read a promise. So you have to convert it to a form of JS format where JavaScript can actually read it. So and I mentioned what a JSON essentially is. Let's say we have this part, right? We have const API is equals to this object property. So a JSON is just like an array or a an object. So it can be an array or an object of data that just contains data. That's essentially what a JSON is. It's a format. You won't have this const API is equals to something. It won't be assigned to a variable. It won't be assigned to a variable, but rather it will just be in form of the object itself. That means I can have something like this and say key to be equals something, right? Have a comma and do oh, let's say base for example, equals Google, right? So you can see now that if I write it in this format here, JavaScript does not recognize it. It is throwing sort of an error. Now, let me now Control Z. So Control C, right? I want to create a file, right? So let me name this file something dot JSON, right? So you can see that I saved the file type as a JSON format, and you can see from my HTML here that the symbol for JSON is something kind of like an object. If you look closely here at this place where I'm hovering, you see something like an object, right? Now in JavaScript, you see that whenever I write this without actually assigning it to a value, like this one up here, API, I'm assigning this whole object into an API, right? Now this one does not return an error. But you see this one where I'm not assigning it to anything, it returns an error. It's because this is a JSON format and we are writing it in a JSON file, so that would not work. So if I were to support this, right, and take it to my JSON file and actually put this here. Okay, let's go. What's going on? think I get what's going. I don't understand what this supposed to work. Well, essentially, what it let me just leave this up on the screen. This folder. Yes, please folder. So essentially what a JSON file is something that looks exactly like this, right? So you have all of this. What this is a JSON file because it contains a set of data, right? It is not JS where you can actually assign that data to something, but JSON format will contain something like this that would this should actually work. Why it's not. I don't know why it's not working, but it should work.
Maybe the string has to be in double quotes. All the strings,
No, I actually added the strings here too, but still not working.
like the value, key in double quotes and one in double quotes.
Yeah, that's what I did at first. You know, okay, they both work in double quotes actually. So if I want to add extra data, it will throw an error. Yes. Good. Okay, okay. I guess that's how it has to be. So you can see from here now that if you have them both in double quotes, thank you for that. Who was that? That is mine. I think it was. Yeah, so if you have both of them in double quotes, yes, you would match that. I wonder why I cannot see my screen. So if you have both of them in double quotes, you can see that we can write something like this in JSON format, right? We can have a key here, and the value that we want to assign to that key property here in this format. But if you were to do that in JavaScript, it would not work. It will throw an error that you have to assign it to a certain constant like this, like a certain variable like this, like we did here. So that's the difference between a JavaScript format object and also a JSON file. A JSON file can be an array in an object, or it can be an object essentially in its own. But what it does is it just stores data. It's a way of storing data sets for us. You can see from this value that we have here, like we have a whole lot of data, right? With different name properties. Like you have ID, you have the name, the username, the email, and all of that stuff. So you cannot store that using a normal JavaScript. You can store that in a normal JavaScript object, but the way it is returned, the way the backenders will write the code, you won't be able to get it in that format itself. So we actually have to JSONify whatever response. We have to actually turn it to a JSON. That's what JSONify means. So that sorry if I'm giving you a bit complex word. But JSONify is essentially like this, and it's something that you probably see moving forward. JSON. So it's something like this, right? Right. So this is what I'm just saying. JSONify just means to JSON something, right? So we are changing that response and we are turning it into a JSON file. Now, since we turned it into a JSON file, then we are now attaching whatever response we are getting from this JSON file, right? We're attaching it to this last to this last dot then. And what that will do is get the data from this JSON file and we'll be able to use it wherever we need to. So that's what this is all about. So let's say we're only considering logging this one because we want to be able to sit in our console like, okay, certainly our 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 data was returned for us and we can see it, okay, that okay, this is the data that we have. That's why we consider to log this. But remember, anytime you need to use that data, particularly somewhere else in your app, right, that you have to use it for evaluation or you want to use it in your code somewhat, you have to always use the return statement like this instead of the console.log. What the console.log will do is it will take it to your console and you just see it there. And you don't want to put an output of something or a certain data in the console, who cares? So you have to always see it in your browser itself. So you always have to return your data so that you can use it in your browser. Now, so let's talk about JSON files and what they have. You know, at JSON essentially what they do is they store all of this information for us, right? We have all of this ID of name, the username, and email, and address, and all of that. And okay, fine, we get that. But how do we actually get the data? Hmm. How do we actually get the data in?
Hello.
Sorry, if you have a question, can you go ahead and speak? I cannot hear you. Probably somebody's mic is. Ismail, do you have a question? Because I thought I heard you say hello or something.
I think you answer it now. I would like to get the data from the.
Okay. Sorry, I did not hear you. Could you come again or probably add it in the chat box? It seems your service a bit. I cannot hear you very well.
I say I wanted to ask how to get those data, like the name, the how to name, username, email. How
Okay.
do we get it into
Yeah, that's what I want to move to talking about now. So essentially, you have all of this data, right? And you're wondering, okay, I cannot just put this data on my website and be like, bam, okay, this is your data. You probably want to display them in a particular way, right? So this is how to go about them. You know, what we are doing here is we are returning data, right? Where is that part? Okay, so let's say for this example now, we have let me copy this and pull up the console here, right? Okay, cool. So what I did was I just copied the JavaScript code for the fetch and everything, right? I copied it from here and I pasted it here. So see the first line, the promise was pending. This line here, the promise was pending. That means it was still evaluating that. And the second line, we got the data, right? Okay, so that's fine. So let me actually copy the one of the weather. Okay, this is the one I want us to use. So yeah, you have this one now. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. So you have all of this, what's it called? All of the data that you have here, you have base stations, you have clouds, you have everything, you have the code, the coordinates, and data. So you probably be wondering, what if I want to get what this base is, like the value of this base? How do I go about that? I want to get what visibility is, or I want to get the time zone, or I want to get a particular wind, right? So how do you go about that? So the way you go about that is, let's say you have a particular, like we are constantly logging the response, right? So the response is sort of the the variable that we are assigning all of this data to. Now, if you go back to our code here, you have all of this API, right, to be equal to this key and this base property. So essentially, what this response does is we are returning all of the response that we're getting here, right? All of the JSON response that we're getting, and we're assigning it to a response variable. In the background, that's essentially what it does. So let's say this API, this is key, right? If we want to get the key value here, we will do API.key. That's essentially how you would do it for these ones too. Now, I mentioned it now that whenever you get the response, right, it's like we're assuming we are taking all of that data and we are assigning it to a response variable. And what I mean by that is, so what this line means, this last line means is we are just saying const res is equals to then whatever data we are getting from here. Do you get? So when we do the fetch, we get the promise, right? This next line, we evaluate what the promise is, we turn it to a JSON. And this last line, what it essentially means is what we are doing is we are taking all of that response and we are assigning to a variable of response like RES. Now, if I now do this and I change this to A, for example, that means what I'm essentially doing is I'm taking all of the response that I'm getting here, right? And I'm taking it and I'm adding it into a variable like this, and I'm putting all of that response inside of this object part. Now, to further to understand that very well, to understand that, so let's say this here now we have all of this based in, right? We have clouds, we have code, we have the coordinates. Now let's see which line is that, line 34. It's line 34. So line 34 here, like we have considered logging what A is, which is the data, right? Now let's say we wanted to get a particular data, like let's say base, and we wanted to get what this value is. That's what we want to go to the console. We do a dot base, right? So when we do a dot base, you can see now that the only thing that it returns to our console is this stations thing, right? It's only the stations that is returning. So that's essentially how we use and how we get the data. Whenever you assign it to a certain variable like this, now I return it back to A, right? So when we check our distance, we see that we have all of the A values here, right? So let's say I want to get this DT stuff now. I'll just do A dot DT, right? And what that will do is it will return only that DT variable for me. Look at this here now. So now let's say I wanted to access something that was not there. Let's say GMT, for example. Now I do a dot GMT. It will return undefined because on GMT is not part of that data that we're getting. Let me go back and let's see. GMT is not part of the data that we're getting. So if you look here now, there's no GMT here. You only have base clouds, then the coordinates like this way. Then you have the DT, the ID, but there's no GMT there. So whenever you do something that is not there, it would throw an error that you have an undefined, like whatever the data that you're trying to access is not defined. So whenever you need to get a particular data from the data sets that you're returning, you just chain them like you are chaining an object normally. Like here now, you wanted to get key, we do API.key, right? The same thing applies here. You just chain whatever value that you have in this A, whatever value you want to get, you just chain that name. So let's say I wanted to get the ID now. Just change that name to it and it will return that value for you as your value. So let's say here now, so should I try? Okay, now you can have situations where Ctrl Z. Now let's check this now. Now you can see here in this cloud, it's also an object that contains all, right? You can have situations where you have two things nested. You have an object nested inside of another object. It's a way that you can store data. You know, we mentioned this when we are treating objects that you can store objects in an object. You can store an array inside of an object. You can store like an array inside of an object, and you can also store an object inside of an array. So let's say in this case now we have a chord, right? This coordinates thing, and it's also inside of an object that we are returning, and it's also an object on its own that contains the longitude and latitude. Please, do you have a question? Or did your mic come on by mistake? I'm guessing you don't. So we can have this array inside of an object now. How do we go about that? How do we go about navigating and getting that particular data? So let's say it was this longitude data that I want to do. How do I go about it? It's pretty simple. Now you know the way that we are getting the data, right, is we are doing the dots, right? So if I wanted to get this chord value, right, what I would do is a dot chord like this, right? So and what that would do is to return the coordinates data for us, and in this case it is a latitude and longitude. But what I really want to use is this latitude. How do I get it? What you just do is you add another dot to it to get that latitude. So it's like you're indexing into an index again. Do you get? So when you index into that, now you can see now that we have the value itself that we need. So that's how you get like a value that is nested, like way nested inside of another. So let's say for this key, let me not change this so that for future purposes. So let's say we have a const things now to be equals, and let's say we have thing, and this is an object of key, be. Now you see that when I copy down this key thing, it is underlining that it's throwing an error. And what that error is okay, we are not adding the comma to the end of our object. So just always remember, if you want to go to the next line when you finish assigning an object to something, you definitely have to add the comma to the end, right? But so as to not let this be confusing, let me just name it random things. Jim, Kim, and Sim, and Sim. Now, so you have this things object, right? And inside of this things object, you have this thing object again. And inside of the thing, you have key, you have gym, all of these properties, right? So if I wanted to access what this scheme is, what I'll do is I'll just console.log, right? Then I'll do things dot. What is the next one? Like that's the parent one that I want to get it to be thing now. Yes. And dot. So if I want to get Kim now, I can access Kim this way. And when I go to my console, I will see that value here, which is B. So that's how you get objects that are deep nested inside of an object. So let's say this key was also another object on its own, and it also had another object, and it also had another object that was inside. You will continue using the dot till you get to the point that you need to get. So that's how you go about getting a data that is nested way inside of another data. Hopefully we got that.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so snap quiz now. You just create a default object that has 4 nested objects inside of it. So you get the last data that is inside the deep the deepest object. Do you get what I mean? So you create an object, right? It will have 4 nested objects in it. Then the last data inside the last object is what you need to get. Did you all get that? So I
Is
give
that
us
a
like
classwork or what?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So we have 5, yeah, 5 minutes is good. 5 minutes. So you create an object. In the object, you have 4 other objects, and you get the last object inside the object, inside the 4 objects that you created. I want us all to do it though. If everybody does not do it, unless you're in the place where you cannot use your laptop, everybody should do it. Because I would assume if you are in this class, you actually have interest in this thing. So it's pretty easy once you get the concept of those things. It's easy to navigate. It's easier to navigate. Are we all done? Now have to give them like long data objects. I just give them like I have here, I have A equal to B equal to C and something like that. Not nothing too long. So I'm going to review every single person. unless you're in a position where you cannot use your phone or where you cannot use your PC rather. I'll be examining everybody's quiz. And if you have questions, please kindly ask me. Time's almost up. There you have it. 5 minutes already. So who has finished with it? And let me make you go so you can share your screen. Who's done? I saw 4 people around now. Elise, Pam, Peace, Ezra, Nairi, Fatima, Ismail, who's done? I know you done.
I'm almost done.
Just got my system now. Can you extend the time?
Yeah, okay, I give you 2 minutes.
Okay, I will try then.
I'm done.
Okay, yeah, you can share your screen.
And please make my PC, at least PC. Okay. It's hello. This is my code. I don't use.
You got your value
Yes, I got to.
from this. Did you work? And can you give me the reason why it's not work?
It worked.
It works.
Yes.
Let me see your line 69. You are not assigning it to anything.
Oh, but it worked. Wait.
Yeah,
How?
that's pretty odd.
That's what?
I said that's pretty odd for it to actually work.
What was I supposed to assign it to?
No, like you are not using const, or was const there because I cannot see it if const is there.
No, there's no const.
That's serious. Anyways, that's just the idea I needed actually. I just want us to see if it works. And if you can, that's just how you can index into an object that is deeply nested actually. So you can stop sharing. Anybody else? Danny, Pam, Fatima, Ismail, Star Ezra, my Ruby.
Morning, Mr. Abdullah. Sorry, I'm not with my laptop, so I won't be able to do the assignment, the classwork.
Okay.
Yes, but I get the message. I get from what Elise has done. I think I get it.
All right.
Thank you.
Peace. How about you?
I'm also done with my system, please. I'm not at home. Sorry about that. Yeah, but I can hit you up later now because I actually didn't get something, but it's okay.
Yeah, is it a question that you can ask? I guess that's what class is for. You can ask if it's something I can answer now.
Yeah, I'm not very set to do that. Like I can't really talk much where I am, that's why.
So was anybody else able to attempt the question? In fact, or should I just move on? Because I think the concept is quite simple. I just want us to have something to do. That's why I actually put that across to the class. It's not really something like very, very heavy or something deep. But do you all understand that, Cha? Hopefully. Okay, moving on. So there's a more tricky part to this actually. So this one that we are doing now, it's actually an object, right? Is when the top part is an object. Now, what I mean by top part is an object is, so let's say I have, let me copy this one, right? And so I'm just copying this URL from Open Weather Map, right? So when I check this data now, you can see like how it begins. It begins with what? With a curly braces, which signifies that this is an object, right? It's an object of data, right? It's an object of data. But you see this one from this typicode.com/users, you can see that this one is an array. It starts with an array. So pardon me. So this one starts with an array, and this one starts with an object, and that is quite funny. So for you to be able to, you can index into this one easily because it's an object. It starts with an object, right? But you cannot do that with this. If you want to get items in an array, right? You cannot do a dot to get the items in an array. You can only do the square bracket method, right? To get the items in an array. You cannot use a dot notation to get what a value in an array is. Now you can see, let me, where it starts when I was trying to edit before. One from type code. Okay, this one. Now, let's say this is the data, right? You can see that the first thing here is an ID. So let's say we want to try to get the ID of one, right? We are returning this data and we are logging it out. I can say I definitely should be able to get the ID of one from this data now. But when we go to our console, you see here in this line, it returns undefined. And you probably be wondering why is that? But we have ID now, so why is it not returning? That is because you cannot call this ID property on a data that is an array that is not an object. It's only easy to do this when you have something like an object, right? When you have a data that is in form of an object. But if you have the data in form of an array, you won't want to do this. So since data is an array and it contains objects like this, you have this object one, object two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? You have all of this data in, let me just put this one. You have all of this data in here, and you can see that they follow the same structure where they have an ID, they have a name, they have a username, they have an email, they have an address, they have a street address. If you check this data that comes before it too, you have the ID. So even if you wanted to get the ID, it will probably clash because it has an ID of 10, the other has an ID of 9, and they have different values. So how do you go about getting a data that is kind of in this form? That you have the outermost layer to be an array where it contains an object. So we can go ahead and do that by actually using the square bracket method, right? So let's say we wanted to get the first data, this one here. We wanted to get this first data from inside of the array, right? It is going to be the first object inside of the array. This one here is going to be the first object inside of the array. And for you to index into an array, you start from 0. So if I consider log data of 0 now, you should be returning this array, this object that contains ID of 1, the name is Leon, whatever, then username to be Brett and stuff like this. So we have this now. So if I do a data of 1, which is going to be the second object in the array, you have an ID of 2, Elvin Howell, and username, and it goes on like that, like that. So the same thing if you do 3, 4, 5. So this is a way where you can get data from a certain URL that returns an array instead of an object. Now we have this data one and it is returning this object. But it's not possible for me to pass this object into my app, right? So how can we get let's say I want to get this name property off of this now. How do I do that? Since I already have data one, right, and it's an object, since this is an object, we can just simply do the dot that we would do normally for an object on this one and we write whatever property we need to attach. So let's say we want to get the name property now. So that should return Evan Howell for us to get. So without that, let me change this back. So so without that, we have this whole object, right? And I mentioned that we cannot use the whole object inside of our app. It just does not make any sense. So let's say I want to get this name property, or let's say I want to get a username, for example. What I'll just do is to get the dot, since it's already an object, it's just a username, and we'll be able to get what that username is, which is Antoinette. So do you all get this? How this is done?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, Ezra, you have a question. So Ezra, I think your audio is pretty bad. Or is it only me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, I said the one that I would access to mine was not running. I don't know. Maybe you can take a look at it.
Let me make you post so you can share your screen. Is it possible you share your screen?
Yes.
I don't know. Well, probably it was Ezra's audio. It was very, very like they had this screeching background noise. But let me,
I'm sure it's his earpiece.
okay.
It's better.
Yeah, it's totally fine. So I've made you co-host so you can go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, 1 second. I'm trying to.
Man.
Sorry, 1 second. My network is a bit funky this moment. I'm just trying to connect.
Okay.
Is my screen visible, please?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this was what I tried to use, and then but it kept showing this error.
Yeah, line 18. Go to line 18 on your code. Yes. Okay, the thing is you cannot assign something like this. So if you want to assign in a if you want to assign another object, you're going to use the normal colon that you use for the normal objects. Do you get what I'm saying? Instead of masculine is equal to, because masculine is also an object inside of an object, right? You
Okay.
cannot use the equal to sign to assign an object to it. You use the colon sign.
Okay.
So once it is inside of an object, when it's not like the topmost one, you cannot use equal to in that sense. You have to use the colon. So you do it for the person to and see. So the person is inside of masculine and masculine is inside of human. Just check this. There's a line somewhere, line 11. So this one's deleted. Yeah. So you should check now.
Okay. All right. I can.
So
Yes.
that's the issue. So
Okay.
whenever it is inside of, like when it's not the top, not the highest components per se, you have to use, when it's inside of something, you have to use the colon, because if you look at it now, it's also a property inside of the first object, so you cannot use equal to assign another object to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry, my own didn't work as well.
No problem. We should just share
I'm
our screen and
having
discuss it.
this error message.
Let me just. I made you co-host already, so you can share your screen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool, cool. Maruvi, I don't know if you are speaking, but I can't hear anything from you. Maruvi, are you speaking? Because I can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay, I was saying I showed my code. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Now.
Yes. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, this is my code, but on my console.log is not showing.
Let's see the error on the console.
This is the error.
Saying dom.js project HTML and 25. Try reloading. Like try using. Go to your project or HTML and try reopening the live server with it. Do you get what I mean? So
I've tried
kill.
that.
Check. Oh, okay, saying this it failed to load the resource. That means the JavaScript file is not loading with the live server. What you can just do is go to your HTML file and actually run it locally. Like go to your folder structure and possibly run it there.
You said I should go to my.
Let's see if Chrome loads up first. What might be occurring is that both of them they are not in the same folder. Have you checked
Same
if
folder.
they're in the same folder?
In the same folder. This is the project.html. This is dom.js. They're all under the same folder, JV.
No, they are not. This one is in its own folder. Dom.js is in its own folder itself. It's in JS itself, not yeah. So it's not under JV. It's inside JS.
So
Do you
JV is
get?
like the general folder.
That's what I'm saying. Like the way you call it now, go to your HTML file. There's a thing about calling this now the way you call this now, you only do this when they are in the same, like when you see now, when you close JS now, you cannot see when you close JS now, you cannot see what's check it now, you see. So the problem was how you were calling. If they're not, they have to be in the same folder for you to just call the name only. But if they are not, you have to use you have to state the file that it is located in. Do you get?
All right, thank you.
So I think because the array is more tricky, I would probably prefer that you guys do the array one now. So you'll be creating an array, right? An array will contain objects, like it will contain like 4 to 5 objects, right? So in those objects, you have probably like 1 or 2 data. So I want you to be able to get the first array and the first object inside of the array, right? You print one data out inside of that, and you get the last object inside of the array, and you print what is in there. Did you get the question? So you have an array, right? the array contains objects, like 4 objects, right? So in that object, you have data too. So you get the data that is inside the first object, which is in the array. And you get the data that is inside the last object that is in the array. So you get 2 separate data, but one is the first object and the other is the last object.
Okay.
Yeah. So that should take us in something less than 8 minutes. We should have all of that in 8 minutes.
Please, can you explain again, Abdullah?
Okay, so essentially what I want you guys to do is you have an object, right? An array, right? In the array, you have like 4 objects inside of the array. So in each object, it will contain like a data or two, probably just one, so that you save time. So let's say I have an array, right? In the first object, you have one data in it. In the second object, you have another data in it. In the third object, you have another data in it. And in the fourth object, you have another data in it. So I want you to be able to get the data in the first object, right? And the data in the last object. You know, they are both in the array, but I want you to be able to get them out and print them out to the console. Was that clear?
Okay.
That's whatever. That's the same image. Matching.
Please, can you share your screen?
Okay. Where is that? So I guess time is. I think it should be over identity. So I guess don't.
Yes.
Okay, at least you can go ahead and share screen. I think yes.
Okay, I'm coming.
So Mr. Ezra, have you attempted it?
I'm still on it. I need like 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. H then it's done. Okay, cool. But okay, I'll just say this as the last remark. So anybody else?
I think I'm ready to.
Okay, Osam said.
Yes.
Give me a minute, let me just. Yeah, of course, also. Right now, share. I review also.
I'm not done. I'm almost done.
I'm also.
Hello,
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm true. Okay.
JavaScript is not hard. I won't make them hard.
JavaScript is hard, please. Okay, so yeah, I was trying to get the yes, the fourth timeline.
So do you work?
Yes, it did.
So that's basically the concept behind it. My review also.
Okay, I'm not getting mine, but
Yeah, okay, Victory. Just share your post. Victory. Your question, if you have a question you want to share too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a list. The one you shared, I didn't know. I was trying to understand it. I was logged out when you mentioned how to that the first object, second object. So
Okay, and no problem. I can
I was
re-explain that.
trying to understand that list.
Okay, no problem. I can actually just like make a correction about because I wanted to mention something too. Okay. So I'll just make a short correction after.
I've done mine too, but it's not locking anything.
Let's review that. So my review, go first.
I mean, hey,
Quel mess.
I share mine.
Is anybody sharing screen?
Sorry guys, network logged me out. So my review, you can share your screen.
You know what? Okay, I don't know why my console.log is showing error self, my code.
No worry, just share. Let's see. We can resolve it together. So
Yeah.
and also, okay. Still failing to load resources. Though. Let's just see why it's showing something like that.
I think it is not calling the object well.
No, the console log itself is returning error. Don't put space after. Like I don't know. That shouldn't be.
Supposed to be bit traditional, bit.traditional.
Okay, you're not calling traditional first, but I don't think that should be any issue.
That shouldn't be the issue.
Shouldn't even because what the error is the console itself is the error. Check your file type. You're on.
Let him delete the two console and the right. Delete those, delete everything.
Wait. Mary, just press escape so I can see what you're screen. Scroll to the top.
You said?
Scroll to the top.
Okay. Everything.
Okay, then beats. Go down. Chill there. So you have traditional, right? Yeah, you are missing a curly braces. That's the issue. You know, traditional. If you check traditional, there's no ending. There's no curly braces for traditional. So you just have Latin, then Afro. No, not there. You know, add it there. You add it after Afro. The last curly braces after Afro. If you want to add it there, you put a comma. Exactly. So I guess that's fine, right?
Yes, thank you.
But wait, this is not what I asked you to do.
Okay, well, the question was to show the first one and the last one. Or
Yes, but it has to be an array. Like the bits itself has to be an array, not an object. You need an object, so that's easy it to navigate.
Okay, so that means I'm supposed to do something
no.
like
Bit itself must be an array. Bit itself.
okay, bits.
Mm.
I don't get that too.
Okay, this is what I asked you to do. You know, in this case now you have bit, which is an object, and it contains traditional, which is also an object. There's an afro, which is also an object.
Yes.
Now, instead of bit being an object that contains objects, it will be an array that contains objects.
Okay. So so that means I was supposed to start with this, right?
Then you delete the closing brackets and put nah.
So
Delete the ending curly braces here, then put that at the end here, the last curly braces that you delete that one and replace it with the with what you deleted before. Yeah.
but there's still
There's
error here.
probably just check traditional. They are closing it, then afro. You shouldn't have an error this way. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Let's go. So, this shouldn't return an error. Oh, okay, I get. Remove traditional, like remove it. And the colon. No, just the colon and traditional, everything just remove. Yeah, and the colon too. So the same thing with Afro to do the same. Yeah. So now your task now is to get what salsa is, then what pop is.
Okay.
So just unshare your screen while you do that. So unless let me see your screen. So my review you can unshare so that I can share a screen.
I'm not a co-host yet. So I'm unable to share my screen.
Yeah, give me a minute. I don't know why this is not clicking. Oh, I'm not a host myself, so I cannot make you host. So what's it called? Michael, please kindly make me host, so or make an co-host. And you probably have to make me host so that I can share. Mike, hopefully you can hear me. It was okay. I'm this host, right? All right, you can share your screen now.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. So and let's see. Oh, I think your one is kind of like the same issue with Ezra's too. You just have
Okay.
wrong calls. So the thing about when you call an what's it called an array is you cannot put something like this. An array is not an object. You cannot put this object thing and put colon there. What can go into an array is just an object itself. And let me just make an example so you guys can see. Let me stop sharing. So let me share and okay. Now so let me just use this moment to explain the concept for an array. So let's say you have an array, right? Equals then this, right? Then you want to put objects inside. You cannot put something like this, like you would for an object, and say, nah, this should not, you don't do this. What an array can take is it can only take an object itself like this, right? Or a string, a number, a null state, a boolean state like this, all of these values. So if you want to define an object inside of an array, you won't do something like this that we would used to do. Something like thing is equals to, then you put a thing, then colon, then you put all of this here. You cannot do that in an array. What you can do in an array is this. Which you cannot do in an object. So what you can do in an array is you just put the array value itself like this. Let me do this. You see, where's this one down first? It's the array that I just put here. Let me see the array that I wrote now again. So this is what you can do in let me factor it so you guys can see it better. So this is what you can do inside of an array is you can write the objects themselves like this. Like this object now is what you can write. You cannot assign something like say object like this and do this. You cannot do this in an array. This will only work in an object. So if you want to write an object inside of an array, you just write the curly braces and write whatever value you want to write there. But inside of an object, you would write something like this: obj, then colon, then the value of the object itself. Hopefully that's clear.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's say you want to get this first object. Now, what you do, I don't. My reviewer, have you been able to get what you like to get what I asked you to get salsa and something else? I think.
No, 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 that's it.
Okay, so essentially, what? Let me just make my own. So let's say we have this, right? Then you have another object that has this. So let's just copy this down a couple of times. So you have these objects, right? That are contained inside of this array. Then this is the first object, this one here. Then you have the second object here. So you have the second object here, right? The third object and the fourth object. So if I want to get this first object, I'll do something like array, then 0. If I want to get this first object, right? And I want to get the key. You know, this is the first object now. Array.0 return the first object. If I want to get this key property now, I'll just do dot key, right? Then I should be able to see this key property. Then for the last one, I can just count 1, 2, 3, 4. So this will be 3, right? So let me just do comma array, then 3, right? Then dot key again. Or let's just use the dot key. So this is Kim. He has Kim, he has Sim, he has Sim, might be okay. Then this will definitely work if you check our console. But let's say what if you have like a lot of data. This is what I wanted to correct Elise and who is the Ezra too. So let's say you have like a million data now and you don't know the amount of data that you have. How would you get the last one? So writing three here does not really make your code very, very good per se. So what you can do is just do array.length, right? -1. So whenever you do -1, you know you get the last item. The array.length will be 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Then you subtract 1, you get the last value inside of the array. So this is a way of going about like of this is a way of getting the last item inside of your array instead of just writing the number, because your array values might be quite a number of you might have quite a number of objects. So let's say you have like 2,000 objects now, and you don't know that it's 2,000 objects that you want, but you want to get the first object and the last object. So this is it would come in handy by just doing array.length, then you subtract 1 to get you the last object. If you were to do array.length in its own, like do array.length now, we won't have anything there. So that's why you have to do array.length -1. So it will be 0, 1, 2, 3, which is 3. So hope that is clear. So my review, hope this explains how to index into an array that contains objects. So what you do is if you want to get an object, so let's say you want to get the first object, you do 0, right? Then for whatever value that you want to get inside of that object, you just do the dot and the property. So let's say this is what I want to check now. So that would be array of 1 because it's the second item, right? And if I want to get Kim, I'll just change this to Kim. And if it is Sim that I want to get, I'll change it to Sim, and that will work properly. Is this clear?
Very good.
Anu, do you get this too?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So that is that about getting. I hope you guys can see this. That's not about getting data from a particular web app or from a particular API. Sorry. So I just use this to explain the concept of getting data. Let's delete this. Oh, this one's that I'm using. Of the excess space. This one. So. Okay. Now this is the one that we're using essentially. So we have this one here. And we give this is not useful. So on this one is actually not useful. So just for us to see what that value is. Now you have this here. This one we explained it 2 days. Was it 2 days ago? Yesterday. Why this one is API.base? We're just putting this URL here, right? Then slash whether then the query search.value. Now why is this here? This is here because whenever you type something into an input, right? I want to be able to get that value. So let's say I typed Indiana, for example. I want to be able to get this value, right? So by getting that value, for us to be able to use the API, we have to know, for us to be able to get the weather of a particular state or a particular city, right? You have to know what city it is. And that city is what you're going to be passing into this queue part. We explained this yesterday that the queue part is where you're just passing the city that you want to check up. So let's say here, let this load up. Now, this queue part you see here is Lagos, right? This is where we want to be able to pass the city that we want to get the data of. So let's say I want to get Indiana now, right? So for Indiana, it would show us what their temperature is. Fine, we understand what that is now. It shows their temperature and the weather conditions for that place. But it's not possible because I'm a user now You now tell me to go to your web app, right? And tell me that whenever I want to check for a certain city, I have to go to the URL and be typing Indiana. That does also it just doesn't make any sense, right? So we want to be able to like use this value that we're getting from this input, and we want to be able to replace what we have in this city aspect here. We want to be able to replace that with whatever value is in our input. That's why this one is here, search.value. And you can remember from when I was explaining search, search is just a query selector that chooses this search class. Let's check here. Where is the search? The input field, right, has a class of search. And you know when we do a dot value for an input field, I've explained this time and time again. When you do a dot value for an input field, it will get whatever value you are inputting. So let's say I put where's my field? So let's say I put Lagos here. It will get what Lagos is. Like this search of value in this case will be Lagos. If I put Ife here, what search of value will be is going to be Ife. If I put Accra here, it's going to be Accra in this case. So whenever we do this and we put search dot value, that means we are trying to get whatever our search value is, like whatever our input value is, and we are putting it here. So let's say I put Lagos here now, or I put Accra, for example. I put Accra here. You know that it will get us the data for Accra, right? So that's why this one is here. So there's certain areas where you probably want to get a data with respect to what a user is giving you, right? With respect to what a user is inputting into your field, right? Now let's say I go to google.com and I type something like Dell, right? Let me type something like Dell. What's going on? I just want to click this. So I type something like Dell. What this will do, now you can see, I mentioned it yesterday. Look at this. Look at this. Now you can see that this Q, you have a question mark and Q is quite popular. What Q is for you to be able to query almost all APIs. When you see this question mark sign and Q equal to, whatever is after that equal to is what you want to search for, right? Now you can see in my Q you have Dell, and this is Dell here that I am searching. So essentially what Google API is just the value that you are putting inside of this input field, they're also putting it inside of this their API, right? That's going to generate your search for you. So that's essentially what you do. Most of the time, when you have a search field, you want to be able to like, use it to search something. In that case, you want to be querying with respect to the data that the user is giving you. So that's why this is here. Not all APIs have this kind of form where you have to be putting a certain value so that you don't think it's a standard form that, oh, you always have to put a certain value here like this. No, not all APIs do this. Like the user's API now, this user's API that gets random data for us. You don't have to input anything to just get random data for you. So not all APIs it's not all APIs that you have to add something like a query value to, like this one that we have. So it's not all APIs that you have to put in a search value for. Some APIs you just have to use them the way that they give you. So I'm just explaining why this is here. So this is for us to be able to like dynamically change what is here. So let's say we change this and we put it to Lagos, right? Now, in our inputs now, let's go. Now let me type Accra here, right? And let me show this thing from here and put Accra inside of this place. Now, I want this to load up what Accra's information is. Yeah, come on, come on, come on. So now for Accra, now we can see that the temperature is what 29.35, right? 29.35 degrees Celsius. Cool. Now, I'm putting Accra here. Like when I click on submit, you should see the temperature to be 29.35. So let me click on submit. What's going on? You see that this is not changing actually. And that is because we changed the value that we have here to Lagos, right? And Lagos, the address should actually change. This weather gets data response, response and display data.
Yeah, this should actually change. So let's remove this. So let me go. On submit, this should actually change. Or is there something else? It's happening. Let's check our console. So things is not defined. Who is using things? That's why it's not showing. So this part here. Okay, so let's do that now and check again. Let's do Accra. Now you see what it returns is the data for Lagos. And why is that? That is because here in our query, we are putting in Lagos directly. So no matter whatever we put inside of our input field here, it is always going to return Lagos. So if I like, I can put London here, right? And submit for London, right? I should be getting data for London. It's still going to return Lagos, and that is because we have then put Lagos here, like that's what we want to be querying, and that is not ideal for something like this. I want to be able to like get different data different data from different locations by my input field. So that's why the search value was there in the first place. So we'll be able to get different values with respect to what we type in. See, if you have any questions, ask now. Ask me. Do you have any questions to what I'm doing? Is it confusing in any way? Because what this search the value now, you can see now that when I go here and I press London, it will get the data for London for me in this case, instead of just generating that one from what's it called? That one from London, from Lagos all the time. We are changing what the query value is, what we are asking from the API with respect to the value that you are putting in, the search value. So that's why this is this way. Anybody with any questions, please? I'm asking now.
The one that you gave us, is it functional? Because mine is not changing.
Yes, it is functional. It is functional.
Mine doesn't give anything.
And just go. Oh, sorry. Go to your share your screen and go to the code and let's see.
Okay.
Can you share because I'm stopping myself from sharing and it's not stopping.
I'm sharing my screen. It's just taking a while. Can you see it?
Not yet. I can't. Can you guys see it? Because me, I can't. I'm still seeing my own screen.
I can see your screen.
Imagine that. Me, I
You can
cannot
see my screen,
Yeah.
or
Your VS code. I can see your VS code.
that's Ellie's, right? Or
Yes.
This is serious. I'm the only one that cannot see a screen like this. Sure. I'm sharing back. Can you guys see my own screen? Can you see my own screen?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop sharing now. I don't know why the stop share is not working for me. Like, can you guys still see my screen this way?
So you're not sharing.
That's serious. Let me just leave the meeting and join back because it's just stuck up on me not sharing. Like I'm clicking on the stop share, but it's not stopping on my own side. I cannot say anything. Let me leave and join the meeting. Okay. Let me make a list host so that at least you can share your screen and make me host later.
Okay, sure. I've made you host. Oh, it didn't give me co-host. Okay. No problem.
Okay, that's it. I don't forget the class was to end at 11. So please share your screen so you can see.
Okay, I'm sharing it.
Okay.
Please, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Yes. So let me go to the website. If I type London, sorry, the network is slow. It doesn't work. It's stuck on New York.
Okay, go to your console.
Okay.
Like your console.
Oh, console. Okay. Failed to load resource.
Yeah, I think the JavaScript code is not there.
Okay, sure.
Which index are you loading? They are loading the third index.
That's this thing. I'm coming. Let me check. I think I didn't put it in. Okay. Okay.
Because the image is not loading up, and I don't.
Yes, I know what happened. I'm coming. Just a second. Same. Okay, it's console. Okay, it's showing the Lagos one. You see?
Yeah, I can see.
So I have to check what happened was I decided to put them in separate folders, so
Yeah,
it
that
gets
was,
affected.
yeah.
So now I just have to link the CSS because the CSS is still not showing.
I just check for the folder where it is now.
Yes. Okay. I think I'll just work on the CSS. Thank you.
So anybody else?
Hello.
Yeah.
I had the same issue with Elise. When I put in the values, I don't get any response. I don't know what the issue was.
Yeah, let me make it so you also can share.
No, I'm using my phone now, but if you can use Elise on to explain.
Okay, what happened with Elise's one was she was putting them in separate folders, and in the code, the way it was structured is like they are in the same HTML and CSS and JavaScript files. They are in the same folder. Only the image is in a separate folder. You get. So she put everything, the JS in a separate JS folder, then the CSS in a separate CSS folder, and HTML separate. So and she was calling it that way, so it was not working because the JS file was not linked to it.
For me, I did it. I put everything in one folder, like the JS, the CSS, and HTML in one folder. Although the image, I didn't get the image because you didn't send it.
Go to your console and tell me what's on there.
Was it sent in the group? The image?
Image was not. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I was getting.
You probably get the image.
I was getting the same error message with her. You said?
Okay. okay, you get was it only the image error that you were getting?
It's not even about the image. I didn't include the image because I didn't see the image in the WhatsApp message group.
Yes, it was
It only
there.
sends the codes.
Like
So, but when I try to get the weather for Lagos, it's not responding, and the other ones nothing is responding.
Yeah, I think what you can do now is just make if your PC is just like log on with your PC and let's see what is up. I really cannot.
Okay, I will do that now.
All right. So let's wait on him to do that. Let's see. Now, so what is happening here is we are just doing this part here. I'm just trying to explain this fetch part. So the fetch part, you don't understand. This API key is the app ID, which is just the API key I'm going to pass here. Then we are returning the response in the JSON format. Then we are doing this display data function, right? Now, the display data function, I will explain what it does now.
You can't see your screen now.
Oh, my bad. So let's wait on Victory for him to share and resolve this issue.
Yeah, you can continue because my system will take like up to 4 or 5 minutes to come up. So when I'm ready, I'll let you know.
Oh. Let me just find this something. Check. Okay. You guys can see my screen now.
Yes.
Give me a second. All right. So we have here that we have the return that returns the response of JSON. Then we are doing this dot then part, which is just displaying data. So essentially, what the display data function does is a function, right? It takes an argument of response. Now, what this response argument is, I told you like whenever we add a dot then, right, it will inherit whatever argument this one is bringing. So that response is coming here, and that's what we are using here. Do we get that? So it won't seem funny. Like, where is this argument
That
coming
response
from?
will be passed into the display data automatically.
Yeah, exactly. Like whenever you use a dot then to change something now, when you use the dot then for this fetch, it would get the promise from this one, and that is passed automatically to this dot then. And when you add another one, it will pass it down again too. So hopefully we got that. So that's what this response is. Now we set up an if block, right? Now yesterday we mentioned some of the response codes that we have. That you have 200. 200 is when it is successful. 404 is when the page is not found, or the value that you enter. 404 is when your page is not found essentially. So you have an error, right? Now this check block is to check if the city that you entered is not a valid city. What we've been checking since morning now, maybe since yesterday that we started, was we are putting in a valid city, like cities that we know that they're actually existing, right? And we are putting that in and we're getting data. But what will happen if we put in a wrong city? So as engineers, we always want to account for those things, because the people that will use the app, they test things in so many different ways that you feel like, is it supposed to be like that? Like you're not supposed to even think that way. So you have to account for different people and how they think. So people might put in a country, or they can put in let's just say just a random thing, a random text, just to test your app. And if you don't throw an error and tell them, oh, this is not bad, they won't complete the user experience. So they won't feel like, oh, this one is just giving us any data or anything like that. So this is what this one is for. Now there's a property on this. Let me first do. Let's do. Let's do Lagos. So we are submitting, it's getting for Lagos. So let's do F2 and inspect. Now you can see now what I'm console.log in here is the response that we are getting, right? the response that's going to be passed down into this display data. And I'm just consider logging out this response. Now, what the response contains, it contains this COD, this COD property here. Probably wondering what COD is. The COD is just a response code. You know, we have 200, you have like all of those response code, right? You have 500 for server errors and stuff like that. So this response code is 200. It's just to tell us that, okay, this thing was successful. Now, normal APIs will probably not put this there. It's not really useful because if it was not successful, I would definitely see it when I'm trying to build the app that I'm not getting any data right. But they just put it there for us to be able to know, okay, the response code was like the API returned data for us. Now, we are now checking if that's response.cod. You can see from here that COD is the response code, right, which is 200 here. So we are now checking if it is 404. And 404 means the page was not found, right? So we have an error variable, which is going to be selecting the error class. So if you check here, there's this error p tag here that has nothing in it, right? So what that would do is that we are checking when the response code is 404, like there's an error, right? That we want to set the text content of this error class to be please enter a valid city. And let me show you how that works. So let's say, for example, I enter Nigeria for here, or let's do Nigeria now, right? And Nigeria is not a valid city. So if I click on submit, oh, it's returning for country too. So let's just do XYZ. XYZ is not a valid city. So you see, it returns this code that says, please enter a valid city. That's because of this line here. And whenever this is true, whenever the response code is 404, you want to be able to print to the console that please, and you want to be able to print it, we set the error to text content that please enter a valid city. And you have this last line here that says search.value dot is equals to empty string. So what this means is, you know that now let's say we had Nigeria before, let's do Lagos now. So we have Lagos now, and it is returning a valid response, right? Now you see that whenever we do that, it also clears the value of what do I want to say? Whenever we enter in a city now, let's do Accra, so that it will be different. Now you see that it is filled initially. When we press submit, it clears out this field, right? There won't be anything there. To just be searched by city name that's going to be there. So we want to do the same thing. So whenever we say please enter a valid city. So let's say I do XYZ, for example now. I press on submit, it will tell us this please enter a valid city, and it will clear out this input field to be empty back. Now you can see now that we still have this please enter a valid city there, right? And we don't want that. So we can do something like print with the capital P. Actually, let me check. So let's do XYZ. Um, so, right, I'm coming out to try something out. I want us to, okay, let's just for now, let's just leave it to the let's leave this. So what I wanted us to do was, let's say I entered an invalid city now. It tells us to enter a valid city, right? And we enter Lagos too. So you see that it returns whatever value Lagos is, but it is still telling us to please enter a valid city, and this is not something that you want to do because definitely Lagos is a valid city. Why would this still be displaying? So I want to be able to account for that. Let me just do whenever that is true. Okay, let's just do document dot error. Let's do Lagos. This is still not. It's still not showing. That is, I mean, it's still showing rather. That's very serious. Okay, probably it's because it's. Let's do this again. X, Y, Z. Sorry, I will explain this in a bit more. I just want to try this out. Okay, fine. Now it's working. What I want is working now. So let me also log it out and explain why I had to go through the steps. Now let's say we entered an invalid like XYZ, right? And we submit that. Oh, okay. And we submit that, right? Let's do XYZ. We submit that and it tells us to enter a valid city. That's pretty okay. And we enter Lagos now. And Lagos is a valid city, so we have this here. But it won't make any sense if we wanted to display what. I'm coming. So this won't make any sense if we are still displaying enter a valid. I don't know if what I'm saying you get it now. Let me just reload everything. Now start afresh after that. So what I mean to say is we have a search by city name, right? So let's say I searched previously like XYZ, something that does not exist, and it gives me something like please enter a valid city. Then after that, I went ahead to search Lagos, which is a valid city, right? And I clicked on submit. And yeah, it's displaying the data for Lagos here, but it still telling me please enter a valid city. That is not something that you want to do. So that's why I had to do something like this. Since we have this to be this error part to be document or query selector, right? Let's just take this out so that we'll be able to use it everywhere. Now, so error is equal to document or query selector of this now. So we want to be able to set the content of error to be empty whenever we are searching for a valid city. That's why I put this line here. Now, when we have an error initially, right, we want to print this out. Please enter a valid city. But immediately I enter something that is a valid city, I want to be able to clear out this text content that we have here before, because the p tag is already on the field. So setting the text contents will mean you just want to put it there, like it's going to be there always whenever we set the text until we reload. But when we enter a valid city now, I want to be able to like make our text content to be empty since it's not going to be returning any error. Do you get what I'm saying? Or I like mumbled everything up?
Yes, you can continue.
Okay. Okay, so that's why I did this part here. So if I entered XYZ before, right, it will show me please enter a valid city. And if I did something like Lagos now, which is a valid city, it was XYZ, right? And let me say Lagos, which is a valid city, it still displays what this entire valid city is, and we don't want that. So that's why I added this line, so that whenever we are searching for a valid city, we want to set the content of of this error message that we should be getting, we want to set it to an empty field. So that's why that is there. So if I do XYZ now and press submit, right? And I do Lagos now, and I click on submit, you see that that field is no longer there. It takes it out, and we have this Lagos, and we get our data that we want. Do we get? So we'll continue explaining the code by tomorrow, and we should possibly do one other project. It is going to be very, very short because like we have very limited time, but we will still do it. So this one we should be done with it by tomorrow. Because you guys have a software session class, a soft skill session class by 11:30. So I want you to attend the class. So if there are any questions now, and if you have any
I'm ready
questions,
now.
okay. Yeah, let me stop sharing so you can share.
Sorry, please, how did you get your image? Did you use it as a background image? Oh, sorry, guys, attendance. Did you use it as a background image, or how did you do it?
Okay, from the styles, it's already in the styles. It was used as a background image. You see,
Image. Okay.
yeah, main container, background URL.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm posting the attendance now.
Okay, so Victory, you can go ahead and okay, let me make you post.
No, not yet. I have not yet joined. I'm joining now.
Okay.
I joined earlier, but you were still explaining, so I needed to log out my system. So I'm rejoining now. Just give me a minute. Okay, you can make a Vic. You can make Vic a co-host.
Okay, Mr. Ezra, you have a question.
Yes, I just want to ask about the makeup classes that you're supposed to take over the weekend at the time. I really want to join that.
Okay. Let's see. Tomorrow we still have Thursday and Friday. Can kindly remind me so I would know which time to fix. Did you get that? And Vic, you already co-host.
Can you please come again? Your voice is quite low.
Oh, okay. I said like we still have like Thursday and Friday, it's like tomorrow and Friday to decide. So
Okay.
whatever time it will be, I would communicate.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, you can see my screen now.
Yes, you should probably mute your mic on your phone because I think you have two devices now, so it's echo.
Okay, so this is the so when I input Lagos and submit, it doesn't bring up anything.
Show your console. Let me see your console, please.
Okay. Where is it?
No, like your console in the.
Oh, okay.
You see your your JavaScript file and your this thing. Your JavaScript file is not linked to your app. They are not in the same folder. So let's see your folder.
Oh, it's not linked.
Yes, let's see your folder. Okay. Can you stop this this thing? I want to see, is this a JS file? Because I'm not saying script, it's not writing .js or anything inside it.
Yes, I just saved it as okay. I need to put okay. Wait, let me rename it as .js. Okay.
Try reloading your app.
Oh, like it's working now.
So that was the issue. It was script.
Oh,
yes.
I didn't include that. I thought the thing already is a .js file. I didn't know. I needed not to
to add the extension.
To add the extension.
Yeah, you have to add it.
Okay. Okay, let me quickly include what was that one you mentioned again? In order for the DC not to show, in order for the error message not to
error. So it's on the script. It's on the script that you use. On the script file.
Hello, Abdullah. Sorry to
Yeah, I can
come
hear
in right now. Yeah, you can hear me, bro?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Sorry that I
It's
just
way
came in.
over
Like,
time. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they're actually having a soft skill session right now.
I know.
Yes.
Listen, I can probably should just let me quickly share my screen so Victor, you can snapshot it and write it when you're free.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So you guys, you can leave the call now. Thank you for attending to this class. So you should join your soft skill session. It's really important.
Okay, thank you very much, Abdullah. Okay,
right.
everyone, you can go and join the soft skill session now. You can it already.
So Victory, this is my screen. Quickly snapshot it so that you can go and type it.
Just a second. Let me use my phone to. Let me use my phone to do that.
You can use function and print.
Let me use my phone a second.
You can use function and print screen on your keyboard. It will automatically take a screenshot of your screen. To be clear, that way.
Okay. Function is what?
Function is Fn.
Which key is function?
You see Fn on your keyboard. Fn.
Fn.
Yes.
Oops. Okay, at the right side, right?
Yeah, on the right side.
At the upper side.
Yes.
Actually, I'm not seeing any Fn here. Well, let me just use my phone.
Yeah, use it.
But I would like to try the Fn too. I just a minute. Let me. Fn, like I'm looking for. That's after F9 and after.
You should see something like print scrn, like print screen. It should be probably on your end button, or you have the button itself. Like we have different PCs, so it will be different. You can just snap it with your phone for now.
Yeah, but I also want to get the shortcut. Sorry, I'm seeing a screen here, like okay, after F12, right?
Yes,
this key is after F12.
Yeah, after F12.
Okay. And what am I pressing with it?
You are pressing Fn, then that button.
Which button?
Like the Fn button and that screen button that you are seeing after F12.
I'm saying I'm not seeing the Fn. I'm trying to check it on my system. Oh, that's the shift.
Yes.
It's the same place where you have shift.
The shift, yeah. So you can use that.
Okay, shift and
that button.
Okay, I'll press it down and
you press shift first and that button. It should work.
That's Fn and the button after F12, right?
Yes, that print screen button.
Oops, not working.
All right, then you can just probably figure that out. It might be different for your keyboard, but for my own keyboard, that's how it is.
Mine is a Windows, so
yeah. I was looking on WhatsApp on
HP.
Okay.
All right then.
I already said you will drop it. All right. See you guys later. See you tomorrow.
No.
Stop sharing.